Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order a meeting of the Wilsonville City Council for our work session on December 7th at 5:05 p.m. And we'll start by asking if the councilors have any comments on review of agenda and items on consent. And I will note that Councilor Lehan is attending the meeting and she's on video. Hello, Councilor Lehan. Any comments on the agenda?
No.
Items on consent? Any councilor concerns? Okay, we'll go into our work session and we'll start with the cultural calendar. That has been prepared with our diversity, equity, and inclusion calendar, or committee.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayor Fitzgerald. I'm Zoe Mumbert. I'm the assistant to the city manager and staff liaison to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which we'll refer to as the DEI committee throughout the presentation. With me this evening is Imran Haider. He is the chair of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. I just want to start off with a little bit of background about where we have been before we get to the cultural calendar this evening. So for those that may not be familiar with this committee, it has been active for just a little over a year and a half. The committee started by, this is a 13-member committee, they started with developing their vision and mission, which is what they have been referring back to throughout their work. From there, they developed their strategic plan, which was adopted by council in July of this year. And then the committee immediately got to work in August and they prioritized the actions that were set forth in the strategy. So there's 3 objectives within the strategic plan and there are 15 total actions. The committee set out to prioritize them into level 1, 2, and 3. So the level 1 priorities, there are 3 of them on your screen, and those were going to be the items that we focused on this calendar year. Once we get through these or get to the next year, we'll go to priority level 2, and from there, the remaining actions will be prioritized later on once the committee is up and rolling even further. So you'll see the circled one on your screen. This is develop a cultural calendar. So the committee's been working on this since September to bring to you what we have today. And I'd like to turn it over to Imran to go over that process.
Thanks for having me. I'm Imran. For those of you who have not met me yet, I'm assistant to Zoe, basically, so I'm just riding her coattails today. All right, so this is, I think, one of our philosophies. If you just read the slide, we're looking at a big holistic picture, but what we want to do is change or help one person feel supported and included in our community of Wilsonville. And this, obviously, there's a lot of different bullet points on the screen, a lot of different steps that we took to get to the point where we thought a cultural calendar was of high priority. And again, the reason for that is, at the risk of redundancy, is just if one person who celebrates a holiday that's not recognized federally, because I think we've all been sort of enculturated by the federal calendar as a status quo in this country, which is ironic because the country is built on immigration of people from all different parts of the world. But yet the federal calendar is always served as like, we're going to recognize these holidays, and these are the ones that will have possibly days off of work, and other people will know about them because we grew up with that calendar. So that was some of the dialogue that went into the process of saying this is a top priority for us. So, and then I guess we want them to see, correct? So you just kind of want to cycle through to see what we came up with, and there's no document on earth really that is going to be 100% a home run and encapsulate everything and check mark every box. But I think as you're skimming this, we have to have dialogue here that's complex, and we want to include every single person in this world that we can. But to a certain extent, we have to say what's our expertise, what's under our umbrella, and so that's why there are different holidays that were discussed and not sort of included on this list because we didn't think that they were in our expert umbrella that we have here in the room for our 13 members. And the main focus here, I guess, was like religious holidays that we feel, again, have a congregation and a following that people know of or personally have experience with growing up. For me, for example, and I was telling Zoe this before the meeting started today, but I grew up in Clackamas County in a different city not too far from here, and there's just no mention of my family's religious holidays, any recognition of that growing up. So I had to sort of hide about it, and no one knew about it. And if I told somebody, they would want me to spell it, or they would ask me a million questions, which is fine. But I think if there was sort of, if the county or the city had a calendar like this, people are like, oh yeah, I saw that, I read about it, I understand sort of what you're celebrating, even though it's not, the whole world doesn't have the day off today. So for me personally, I think selfishly, I think this is a part of the process of getting people who there may only be, say, 500 people in Wilsonville that celebrate the Chinese New Year or Eid after Ramadan or something like that, but that's still inclusivity, right? So that's where we don't have everything covered, but that doesn't mean that we're always a work in progress, and we can always add as needed with suggestions from people that work here or people that live in our community. So, yeah, and then I can't remember what's on the next slide.
Our next steps.
Oh, yeah, so that's why we're here tonight for this next part. So, yeah, we're gonna work on refining this as we go along. Some people may ask, what's the point of a cultural calendar? And one of our goals that we've discussed at our meetings is to have a social media page or some sort of affiliation with Wilsonville social media pages. And I think that also is just, there's small steps. Like if somebody sees a social media post about a non-federally recognized holiday, or say we're doing more recognition with our Wilsonville social media for Indigenous people, and that's just, again, traditionally I didn't grow up with that. That's part of it. So social media is going to be sort of connected to the cultural calendar, because people are like, well, what does it matter? It's just on the city's website. And it's like, it matters. A, yes, it does, and B, that's going to serve as like an all-encompassing sort of master document or list that we can go off of when we're like, do we want to make mention of this on our social media site and how? And so we already have a list here that's built that's going to create sort of a template for us to work off of. And
you might also, other areas that you will see this are within the Boones Ferry Messenger, we offer upcoming dates. You could also see this on the city's calendar, just acknowledging the information. It also provides a list for our staff to consider as they build their programming in the future, should they wish to take on another type of celebration or something to acknowledge, maybe with the library's book displays. So this is really intended to, as Imran said, increase the sense of belonging, acknowledgement, and also provide an opportunity for people to learn, as we'll be able to share more about these within our community. I'd also like to back up just for 1 second. Imran had mentioned that there were some ideas that we looked at but we did not include. The committee had quite a robust conversation about a number of these things, especially regarding suicide prevention, mental health, things like that, to determine really what's within the scope of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So this is not an all-inclusive list of all potential days of celebration, and it's not meant to exclude those. It's just meant to highlight those dates of recognition and importance to those groups that have been historically marginalized and elevate them.
Yeah,
So,
National Donut Day is important.
Yes, National Donut Day, Slurpee Day are very important, but as they're not within our scope, they were not included.
And the other thing I was going to add to what Zoe's saying real quick is just as we support local businesses as well in our community in Wilsonville, whether the people live here or not, they run a business here. I think this is also going to be helpful to people who are trying to, and it's like, how does this immediately educate people? I think there are people that run businesses that may want to include different things in their handbook for HR purposes or whatnot, that, for people that work at companies. And hopefully this will create a trend for, other surrounding communities, and they'll be like, wow, and I think we're already doing that. I think this, just our dialogue right now is more than what we're seeing around other cities, but I think that that's another just built-in type of connection that we have to, like, say, business owners or people that are reading, like Zoe said, the Boones Ferry Messenger, that can travel to different corners to, say, not just kids that are growing up in high schools and middle schools in Wilsonville, but also high-level professionals. So that was the other thing I wanted to mention too. It's like, it's going to help with inclusivity, belongingness, and a lot of other things. And we're going to try to focus on what we have instead of like trying to nitpick at what we didn't include, which Zoe just mentioned. There's stuff that we just didn't feel comfortable being an expert in that area. And so that's probably why you may not see everything that you can think of under the sun.
So this evening, we're here to answer any questions that you may have. You'll see this again on the 19th, seeking your approval, and that will allow us to be ready for 2023 to start acknowledging these holidays and moving forward from there. And with that, we'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Sure. Go ahead. This isn't showing.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I think that the calendar that's being recommended makes a lot of sense. I wonder, in the future, as we progress and grow and evolve as a city, if there are dates that come to our awareness or seem more prevalent to community members that are in Wilsonville, how do we go about making additions or changing the calendar? What would the process look like? I assume it's with the DEI committee, but is there a structure or any thought on how that might look like in the future?
I would imagine that it would come from a recommendation that the community would bring something to either the council to direct the DEI committee to look at it, or the DEI committee would become aware of it and make that recommendation to you. As we are seeking your approval of the calendar so that it is policy for us,
Right.
It would come back to you. But this is, as we mentioned, this is not an all-inclusive list. So just because it's not on the list doesn't mean that we can't recognize it or call attention to it in the future.
Or even have programming
Right, exactly.
around it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think about like the schools and SMART, for instance, have done the Ruby Bridges
Right.
programming the last two years, but we will continue on with these activities. Okay.
Yeah, the other thing is that I was talking to my dad about this, and I was like joking with him, this isn't a paper calendar that we're printing like 5,000 copies, and he was joking with me about it, and I was like, Dad, all this stuff we're able to edit things electronically, and because he was referring to Eid, and on the Jewish calendar and Muslim calendar, those have to be revised because they're on a lunar calendar, which a lot of people don't know, but those move like 13 days. Well, Muslim calendar moves 13 days back every year. So Ramadan starts on March 23rd this year. It starts on March 10th the following year. So that it's got to be revised every year. So it's going to always be a working document for those purposes. And again, that's why the federal calendar is it's tough. We grew up with this calendar that was printed, and it was just like, these are the days every year that you see these holidays. So.
And that's a great point. I didn't mention it in the staff report, but it is our intent that if they're listed on this calendar and the date moves, that we'll move the date annually. That should have been written in Word, but that is our intent.
Thank you. Councilor Lehan.
Yes, are these are mostly holidays, is that right? As opposed to festival kinds of times that different cultures celebrate? We're thinking about holidays, standalone holidays.
They're not all holidays. Some are dates of recognition. Some of them have become more event dates, but dates
Right.
of significance for those historically marginalized communities. So in that sense, it's pretty broad, but you'll see, I've got March in front of me. So you've got Women's History Month, as well as Ramadan.
Oh, right.
So some are more religious holidays that are celebrated by different populations within the community. Others are days of significance to recognize, dates of significance to different groups. So it does vary.
And just to add to Councilor Leanne, what she's saying is, I grew up in Clackamas County, like I said, never learned about Juneteenth in all the years that I went K through 12. And that's an example, like that, that holiday didn't exist on the calendar we grew up with. And so I think that's another example of what Zoe is trying to say. It's not like it's a holiday, I guess, but it's a more of an important date of recognition that we felt needed to be on this calendar. That's, again, we don't see that on federal calendars. I don't know if anyone else has, but I have not until recently.
Anything else to that point, Councilor Leha?
Well, I just, the only one I was going to bring up in terms of then a festival is when we had our very first one right before the pandemic, which was an Oktoberfest festival, because that is it's an odd deal, but it is a huge part of Wilsonville's history. We are very German, including Charles Wilson, and yet that has always also been kind of pushed down, certainly since World War II. I've got a cemetery full of people named Adolf, for instance, but not after World War II. They just sort of drifted into the background and no one wanted to speak of them. But I think we need to recognize the German heritage that we have. I'm not German, but a lot of people in Wilsonville, certainly many of our roads, are named after German families. So Oktoberfest, it was really unfortunate because we had a great Oktoberfest in Villebois that right before the pandemic hit, and then we haven't had another one, of course. So anyway.
And is that mainly? I just wanted to ask prior to World War II, was it focused on agriculture and the harvest?
I don't know that they even had one before World War II, but I'll tell you my memory before World War II is pretty limited.
Yes, we won't quiz you on that.
I'm old, but not that old, so I don't know. I do know that the Frog Pond Church is on the map as the German church. So there's no question. A lot of things were in German. The headstones are in German. We just have a lot of German stuff, and yet we've tried to be French with Villebois and Charbonneau, but we're not very French at all. We're very German. So I don't know. It's a dichotomy of. I mean, it's an interesting thing in our background that I don't think we should be ashamed of being German, which is kind of what has happened since World War II.
Is this something that the DEI committee, maybe this is something that you could talk about in the DEI committee? We also might have a lot more people from other, we might end up with a lot of people from another ethnic background in the years ahead and want to do that.
Mayor, this might be one that falls more into the cultural aspect.
It might be arts and culture.
Yeah, because I think the DEI is for events and activities that are kind of not traditionally
I think that's something to consider, and then it could represent. So I think this is something to note and talk about with both committees.
We're happy to discuss it. I mean,
and Councilor Lehan has brought it up before, and it could be. I'm not going to make up all the try to write how it would be done now, but perhaps it's regarding agriculture or agricultural heritage and German heritage, those kinds of things. If the staff could make a note for our Arts, Culture, and Heritage Committee, and you could just...
I think we included some language. Was it in the DEI?
We have...
Strategic plan?
Yes, we do have a goal of, or an action of focusing on or acknowledging groups from our past, including German, Chinese, indigenous peoples. That is one action, but we can't do everything at once. So it's not one that has risen to the
moment.
Right, that it's not a priority we're working on. We do meet on December 12th, which would be before we bring this back to you. So we could certainly add this to our agenda and have a dialogue about it and bring back a recommendation for your next meeting.
Well, at this point, at our next meeting, as I understand it, we're talking about this calendar to begin with, right? Approving this.
We're approving it, yes.
Yes, and then there are opportunities to add things to it and amend it as it goes forward, as you have future decisions. So, I mean, we're not voting on things here, but it doesn't seem to me that we need to vote on that right now, but it bears noting to discuss it in the future DEI.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Councilor Linda.
I think it's great that the committee was able to identify activities that would occur each month, and I think use of the Boone's Ferry Messenger is a great thing. My assumption is that at least some of the dates will be on our website. Will there be also maybe a small educational piece with each one that really kind of is an explanation of what that day is, so it's both educational as well as informative?
That is the intent.
Okay.
We might do better in the spring than in January.
Sure.
Just with capacity to get everything rolling. But yes, long-term, that is our intent, or on social media, that we can make sure to have that post saying we're celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a federal holiday, but that's an easy one where we could have some information. But yes, long-term, that is our intent.
Yeah, and I think it goes really to Imran's point that, people don't really understand all of these very well, and so I think it's a great opportunity to educate our community as well. And I wonder, I noticed that Cinco de Mayo is not on here. Was there discussion in the committee about eliminating that from the calendar?
I don't believe it was ever on the calendar. So backing up just a little bit, we started with, because my understanding is it's not a date of significance or it's not known as, I think that we celebrate it in America as, I'm going to totally mess this up, but
there is some controversy about that particular
so it
holiday.
It was never even on the list. So basically how this list came to be is I believe we started with a list from Harvard that our vice chair had found.
Yeah.
And then everyone emailed me their ideas of what should be on there.
Okay.
And I produced a list. And we went through every single item to discuss whether it was something that we should have on the calendar. And after a few meetings of discussion, going back and forth, having quite some discussion about what should and shouldn't be on there, we opened it up to the community to ask, what are we missing?
Okay.
And as you saw in your staff report, the committee made an effort to address each of those items to make sure that they were having thoughtful discussion about that.
We felt that, I think what little went into that, it's great that you noticed that and picked that up. I think Mexican Heritage Month is in November. I'm probably wrong on that. It's September to November, I believe. But I think that does more justice to again, exactly what it's doing. I think, again, this is just one person's opinion, and you can throw tomatoes if you want, but Cinco de Mayo has turned into something else. It's for food and drink, and it's become, and it's great. I mean, whatever. People should be happy and be merry about however they want to do it. But I don't know that it serves what you're saying, the educational purpose, or for people who would like it. Maybe the purpose they would like it to serve, that people that create their identity through that ethnic background. That's all. I don't know if it serves that purpose, and that's why I don't think that it made it very far on the list.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your report, and we'll look forward to seeing the next version of it.
Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah.
And that brings us to an update on the emerald ash borer with Dustin Schull.
So I believe Chris Delt should be joining us tonight. There he is. Give him a second to get digitized here.
Can you see if this works?
All right, here we go. Good evening, Mayor Fitzgerald and members of council. I'm Dustin Schull, Park Supervisor for the City of Wilsonville, and joining me tonight is Chris Delt, Parks Maintenance Specialist, and our Parks Arborist. We are here tonight to give you an update on the city's emerald ash borer strategy and kind of where we are now with ODA and ODS. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. A little Zoom rusty here. Let's see. And then that should be in presentation mode. Is that? There we go. All right, Chris, you are on, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and City Council, for taking time to discuss emerald ash borer. So we're going to go into a little bit of background here on the emerald ash borer. So it's an invasive beetle from Asia. And over there, again, they have the resistance over there for their ash trees, but over here, we don't have that resistance for our ash trees. So again, they come over here, it's beating up our ash trees pretty bad. The beetle itself is 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch long, narrow, and if you see when it opens up its wings, it's also metallic. If you open the wing, you have a red metallic as well. And kind of that penny up there on the right-hand image to kind of discuss that. And there's also a lot of lookalikes. So you see there's a lot of other borers and other lookalikes that are also green, all that fun stuff. So we're trying to inform people the difference of the lookalike as well as what it actually is. So it was found in 2002 in Detroit, or in Michigan, in Detroit, sorry. And most likely brought over packaging supplies. It's been found in 35 states. We are the 36th state. It was confirmed in Oregon on June 30th, 2022 in Forest Grove. So we now know it is here. It is confirmed. Again, that was found by a biologist, invasive species biologist who works for the city of Portland, and that just shows how important outreach and information about how to identify that, right? You just have to be at the right place, right time, and catch that. Why are we worried so much? This pest kills tens of millions of ash trees throughout it's killed just so many ash trees throughout North America. They're estimating between 20 and $50 billion of damage as far as urban loss for trees and replacement. So the adult eats ash tree leaves. The adult really isn't the problem, right? It kind of hurts the tree. The main issue is the larvae, right? They eat the ash tree cambium layer and they just wreck the tree. They just destroy every single thing about as far as moving nutrients throughout the tree. Next slide, please. So what is the host tree, right? So we have all true ash, right? Vaccina species, right? This is all ashes: green ash, redwood ash, the Oregon ash, the most important one for us. So there's thousands of native Oregon ash found throughout the city riparian areas. And that's like something that we really need to concentrate on and begin to wonder how we're going to handle that as a state. And then overall, for the city of Wilsonville, there are about 1,100 ash trees found throughout in the city tree inventory. And then we also have another host, which is the white fringe tree, native range from southern New Jersey to Florida and Texas. That tree is not found in our city inventory, but it means that it could also be as far as backyards and other places. Ash ID overall, the leaves are opposite and pinnately compound. So you see the image to the right here. There's 6 actual leaves. So those actual, multiple leaves you see there, the little leaflets. The actual big leaf there is actually the leaf itself. So walnuts have it. There's a couple other ones, but it helps definitely with the ID overall. Next slide, please. So what are we looking for signs and symptoms? How do we know if we got emerald ash borer floating around? So bark signs, we have the D-shaped exit holes. Those are very distinctive. Those are actually, that we know we have it. You have bark splitting, woodpecker damage, and then the S-shape galleries within the actual bark. Those are going to be a little tricky to actually get down, and you have to actually go to the tree itself. What we're wanting to help people see is canopy symptoms, right? So crown dieback and suckering shoots. So as you see here in the image to the right, massive crown dieback, and then suckering, that tree trying to rejuvenate, trying to recover back the leaf and the structure of itself. Next slide, please. So how are we building awareness, right? How are we making sure we're aware of this and going forward? So we had an internal team training, which I got the privilege to lead, where we went out and actually identified ash trees with Public Works, Parks, Planning, and discussed, what does it look like, declining trees, and just overall got to identify some stuff. So now people out in the field, our team out in the field can now potentially see something like this. Or if a citizen comes to them with concerns, they're able to, address that issue. We also are starting an urban forestry sub-team for response. That means tomorrow for the very first time. And we're going to do an outreach plan on that, right? How do we communicate with the citizens? How do we get out the community and actually figure out, how do we go about informing the citizens, like how do you look for this, the signs and symptoms, and building all that out, making sure we're helping them out. And then we also want to develop process to help the community streamline response. So if they have a tree, an ash tree, and it is declining or dead, how do they go about permitting and getting rid of that tree properly? Or if they actually find the pest, how do they go about informing the right, ODA authorities to make sure they're not just shipping it and spreading the pest further on? So there's proper ways to remove this tree, and you have to identify or inform the proper officials for this as well. And lastly, we want to categorize the public ash trees. So we know now we have this inventory, so we know how many are publicly owned, how many are owned by the adjacent owners, how many own Public Works, how many, we have to manage to begin to either make sure they're healthy trees or try to maintain them. Are we going to treat them, or are we going to remove and replant? Because we have to do something with these trees, or else we're going to have some issues with this emerald ash borer. From here on, Dustin will take on the next slide. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so, as Chris kind of spoke to here, we have those, 1,100 trees in our inventory that we've identified, right? Those are street proper park trees, not within our green spaces. So what we've done is we've leveraged our citywide tree inventory with a third-party arborist to go out and actually get eyes on those. Well, what we saw down the bottom there was 1,264. With the interns, we got some mislabeled ash trees, so we actually reduced that number to the number on the right there. That 1,113 is our true ash inventory currently outside of green spaces. So we're really starting on the offensive, right? We have the tree inventory. We do have some funding available through a Q1 supplemental for climate resiliency. And, we're really going to use this inventory to stay accountable. We're going to be able to isolate these trees, these areas, and work through this in a process that feels like we should be making forward progress each year on removing and replanting ash trees or combating this as it kind of comes in. And then we'll keep repeating that survey every 2 to 3 years. As you can see this is just pulled right off of our, publicly facing tree inventory. Our number one ash tree in our roads and right-of-ways and parks is green ash, and then the Raywood ash, Oregon ash, and white ash, and then the species go on from there. Almost 600 individual specimens of green ash alone as we kind of start to go through this inventory. Morgan Holland was our third-party arborist who pulled together this data for us. We have 78% of our trees are healthy, 15% are stressed, 7% in decline, with less than 1% dead. The most kind of recent data information we have through her and ODA and ODF is that the healthy trees are actually the ones that bring in the adult larvae, and those are the ones that will be the problem first. The ones that are dead or in decline probably will not be a priority initially because they don't serve as a bait tree as we initially had maybe kind of been informed. So through her arborist report, she went through the entire city and she fully mapped the city. So you can see down there in the left-hand side there's 47 individual zones within the city, and they all kind of play out like that map on the right. There's 4 trees on Fairway Village in Charbonneau that are known ash trees in the inventory. That can help us to, both direct, mailed information to residents, maybe reach out to them directly through some means, or just, understanding that in all of Charbonneau we have 4 ash trees. So the mapping piece of this has been very helpful for us as we look to develop a strategy moving forward. And then next steps for us, we really needed to get into this with a core group. That team that Chris has developed and is going to lead is going to be fantastic for this. The systematic removal and replant internally, right? We have almost 210 trees, or just over 210 trees there, just over 20%, or right at 20%, that we can manage internally as a city team. 150 in our park. So you can see Edelweiss Park there in Villebois on the right, just as a snapshot of one of our parks, right? There's almost 20 trees there that we need to develop a plan for and a timing for. We also need to figure out what to do with our green space trees. We understand that Beckman Creek and the park in Marysfield have a high number of ash trees, and with some guidance from ODA and ODF, what do we do to help put some trees underneath those ash trees before they fail, right? To start to reforest before we see the pests come in and remove it and are playing on the defensive then. We need to develop a strategy for the community trees, outreach and education, reviewing how tree permits are handled around ash trees in general, and then how can we help the community respond, right? How can we be instrumental in a success story out of this very challenging time that certainly is coming with the Emerald Ash Borer for us. As an internal team, we will continue to be educated. Frequent conversations with Morgan have been happening. The information is changing all the time. We're waiting for some guidelines from ODA and ODF. And there's also June 1st of 2023, there's a World Forestry Center EAB training by the zoo there in Portland that we plan on sending a decent contingency of teammates to get the most up-to-date information that we can in our response. At this time, we're available for any questions. Here's a picture of Toledo, Ohio, 2006 to 2009. The left, they are healthy. The right, they have been decimated by the Emerald Ash Borer. This is the realities of our situation if this pest takes hold. So we're just going to try to be as proactive as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, Council? Councilor Lehan.
So have the ash trees been removed from the approved street tree list? Are we not planting them now?
So that is a conversation we will confirm with planning tomorrow. But in some conversations with our community development director up to here, I believe that is the case. Yes.
Okay.
Council President Aukervall.
I guess just out of curiosity, I wonder, with the tree inventory data that we have, can we also see the age of the trees? Like, I'm curious, as you're talking about replacing and kind of preparing for the replacement or reforestation of those trees, what is the bulk, or how is the distribution, I guess, for the age for the ash trees that are within Wilsonville? Do we have that visibility?
Within the data, I'm sure it exists, and we can certainly get you that. DBH is going to be our best indicator there, but it does feel like the majority of what we control internally, at least, is located in newer neighborhoods and newer parks.
Okay.
So 20 years old or less,
okay.
But still, significant trees at that age.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I think we've got it covered. You definitely have a thorough approach, and we really appreciate it. Look forward to more community outreach so everybody can be on the lookout. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So that brings us to our Willamette Water Supply Program for the Wilsonville Area Pipeline Project.
So one of you two, if you want to get up to the podium. I can't hear you.
Podium.
Oh.
And then you're going to go here. Oh, I see. You're welcome. Sorry, Jane.
you. I got it.
You got it.
Yeah. Council and Mayor, I'm Andrew Barry. I'm the Capital Project Engineering Manager. A few months ago, we came to the council and discussed some components of the Willamette Water Supply Pipeline, and there were questions that were brought up specific to public outreach, communication, and the status of the project. We felt it'd be a great time to address council, specifically with the Willamette Water Supply team, and I'll let them introduce themselves and hand it over to them to start the presentation.
Yes. Good evening. My name is David Kraska. I'm the Willamette Water Supply Program Director. And the presentation I have for you tonight is my part is going to give you a brief overview of the overall construction activity that we have going on in your city. And then I'm going to pass to Marla Smock here, who's going to talk about our communications efforts through all the stakeholders and all the impacted parties throughout the city. So with that, go on to the next slide. And the next slide is our mission statement, I believe. Yes, so what it is that we're doing in the overall water supply program is to provide a cost-effective, reliable, resilient water supply system by July 2026 that benefits the current and future generations of the communities we serve and supports a vibrant local economy. And so this is a partnership project of the three agencies located at the bottom of the slide there, Tualatin Valley Water District, cities of Hillsborough and Beaverton. Next slide. So partnerships are a big part of what we do, as I just presented, and as stated in here in the top bullet, it's to provide a new water supply to those agencies, and everything for this effort is paid for by the ratepayers of those agencies. There are other partnership benefits that the program is bringing and to the impacted communities, such as Wilsonville. There's a number of completed projects I'm going to present to you on the next slide, but on the project that we have yet to complete, which we call our PLM 1.3 project, the remaining pipeline segments through the city, we are going to be doing some intersection improvements at Kinsman and Wilsonville Road and at 95th and Beckman. We have a 95th Road panel replacement activities that we're going to be taking place, intersection improvements along 95th, and fiber optic conduit along 95th. So those are all improvements that we'll leave behind once we've wrapped up all of our construction activities left to go. Next slide, please. This next slide will take me a little bit of time to walk you through, but it's an aerial of the city. It basically covers all of our construction activity in the city. So going from left to right, the north is to the right, so it's kind of, we've got 90 degrees angle here in the city. But on the left-hand side is the Willamette River, and located there is our intake and the water treatment plant for the city. The intake is shared by all of us. It's currently used by the city of Wilsonville and Sherwood for water supply, but it's also going to be used as for our agencies for the water supply for the Willamette Water Supply Program. Our activities there were expanding the intake and improving the seismic resiliency and installing our pipeline through the park. All of that work is complete. We have still some work left to do there to finish up our work around the treatment plant area, and that includes building some of our facilities on the upper site, but all of the underground work and our improvements to the park and access to the riverbank are all complete. There's a pipeline segment that connects to that segment that was installed as part of the Raw Water Facilities Project. That's shown on the drawing there up at the top, their PLM 1.1 pipeline. So that's on the other side of Arrowhead Creek, comes up to just short of Wilsonville Road. Then going across the top there of our other completed projects, our PLM 2.0 project is a pipeline segment in Kinsman. That was started back in 2016, and that was actually another partnership project that we did with the City of Wilsonville. City of Wilsonville and ODOT were constructing that roadway, and we got our pipeline done there at the same time so we wouldn't have to dig up the brand new road. And we also completed another partnership project with the City of Wilsonville. That's our PLM 1.2 project, which was the Garden Acres Road project. So all of that work was completed successfully, and really proud of that work. The work remaining, as I mentioned, is our PLM 1.3 project, and that's shown in the bottom sections in red. We have a remaining section in Kinsman Road there, showing crossing Wilsonville Road, then up to that section that's completed completed in Kinsman Road. And then the other longer segment that goes from Beckman, then down 95th, and then up Ritter Road. So that's all the remaining construction activity that we have in the roadways. So really quite a bit of work to do, but we're all set and ready to get it done and on time. We're showing construction beginning there in 2022, so essentially now, and then wrapping up in December of 2024. So with that, I'll pass to Marlis to talk about our communications efforts.
So thank you for having us. Again, my name is Marlis Mock, and I lead communications on the Willamette Water Supply Program. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on the outreach that we have completed to this point, and then what we're going to be doing over the next several years as these pipeline projects are complete. So we have a lot of different ways that we've been communicating with Wilsonville residents, starting in about 2019, largely in advance of the Garden Acres Road project, as well as that raw water facilities project near Maury's Landing that Dave mentioned a second ago. We care a lot about reaching as many people as we can, making sure they understand what the impacts are, making sure that we're available to people who have questions. So we've used a lot of these different tools as we communicate, as we do with all of our pipeline and facility projects throughout Washington County and Clackamas County. Next slide. So for this pipeline section that we're talking about that starts early next year, we have been working really closely about the last 12 months or so with a lot of the businesses along Kinsman Road in particular, 95th and Ritter Road, and started with a survey about, what are their trucking operations look like, how many staff do they have, to kind of get a better understanding of that. But we had individual briefings with a lot of the different businesses there. We continue to keep the city of Wilsonville informed through your public affairs staff, as well as staff like Andrew. Really important to us that all of our agency folks are in the know about what we're doing, so that if they get questions or concerns, they know who to reach at Willamette Water Supply. Coming up early in January, we have what I call a liaison meeting, where we invite a lot of these folks, any agency folks who we think should know about the project. We'll host basically a briefing for them before construction starts, so they're in the know. Next slide. So in the last year or so, we've had briefings with all of these different businesses in the project area. And these aren't just sort of, here's our information and here's how to reach us. These were very in-depth briefings with maps, very detailed drawings, trying to really understand how our construction impacts them. And in a lot of cases, the design or the timing of the project was influenced by the information that we received during these briefings. Next slide. So as we move ahead, we're going to be doing the same level of outreach essentially throughout the life of the project. We have a lot of different methods and how we do that. The most important one is just for everyone to sign up for monthly email updates, but we're going to have a Meet the Contractor event. We go out every time that there's a new driveway that's impacted. We get a hold of those people all over again, remind them of what is about to come, how long it will take, really kind of hold people's hands through the process, because construction is not fun for people, and so we really try to be there for them. So these are just a lot of the different tools that we use on a really regular basis on our projects. So that concludes sort of a bit of background on outreach. Do you folks have any questions for us?
Council President Ockrell, comment?
Thank thank you. Thank you for the presentation. This is good information for us to have. I don't know if I have so much of a question other than a comment that I, previewing the slides before the meeting tonight, I was curious about those meetings with the businesses specifically, because I see that as being a very important piece for the 95th and for Kinsman to some degree as well. But I appreciate hearing about the level of detail that happened in those meetings and the ongoing communication. I think that's going to be really important for success and general happiness of our businesses in Wilsonville. So thank you for persisting with that, I guess, over this project.
Thank you. I don't see Councilor Lehan on my screen, so somebody can see if she has a question, let me know. Councilor Linville.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, and I appreciate the detail and the concern for communication. One of the things I wondered about is it sounds like if there is direct impact, like a driveway, like a home that's adjacent, it sounds like there's a lot of communication there. I'm wondering about those that might be just a little bit farther away, but they either hear it's noise or it's vibration, or where we have heard some of the issues and concerns, and wonder if they know who to contact, or who, if they don't happen to be that right there, and I hate to say it, but I assume that everyone reads the Boones Ferry Messenger, but not everyone does, and it sometimes is just not until they all of a sudden have an issue that they go, who do I talk to?
Yeah.
So how is that being handled?
Yeah, so a couple of strategies for Wilsonville in particular, because we have heard that concern that maybe people a little further away wouldn't know about the project. So we're about to launch a postcard that announces construction is going to start, along with our Meet the Contractor event date, which is also early in January. And we're extending out the mailing to 2,000 feet within the pipeline route, which is a really, really big area. I was surprised to see the map. Very extensive mailing. So every single household or business will get that postcard, along with Boones Ferry Messenger. We'll also have signs, those digital display signs at each end of the construction area. So people traveling through will start seeing notice of construction, where to get more information.
Good.
Yeah, but if there are other suggestions or ideas about that, we'd love to entertain that. But we keep really close contact with Bill in your public affairs office, and he often provides suggestions or ideas for our group as well.
And then if those issues come in through the city, are they then being forwarded, do you think, consistently to you so that you're able to address them?
Yeah, as long as Andrew and Bill are aware of the questions and concerns that come in, and they, have me on speed dial, it's really easy for me to address those questions and issues. So where we have tough times if someone's getting those calls, but we're not aware of it, and then we can't do anything about it. So as long as we have transparency through the city staff to us, then it works really, really well.
So just for us, so if we get, because we see citizens here and there and hear complaints, and sometimes we hear complaints that someone complained to them and they don't know anything about it, but it could be third or fourth hand. How is that? Do you think that's best for us to handle that directly through our city staff and let them then contact you, or?
I tend to think it is, if one of you wants to respond, obviously that's what you should do. We're happy to help support a response that you might give and provide an explanation if you need help with that. My contact information is there, our email address, and our hotline phone number, but Andrew knows how to reach us directly. And any kind of support that you need, even if it's just background information on our relationship with the city of Wilsonville, because that started, what year was that, Dave?
2015?
2015.
Yeah.
So, you know, there might be background there that is helpful to you because many of you weren't here when all of that was happening, so.
Yeah, and I think just having a really, you know, not giving citizens a run around and trying to get the most expeditious way for them to get their concerns addressed is probably what we want to do, not necessarily be able to give them all the information ourselves, but.
Yeah, and we're a pretty hands-on, touchy-feely group, so we're pretty nimble and we respond pretty quickly. And then we could even let you know if someone has further questions or concerns or for some reason needs to involve all of you again. So happy to do that.
Right. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I think Bill and the city manager usually keep us really well updated. It'd be good to have, if there are a series or repeat questions and a standard answer, give those to us periodically. And then we, I think as a council, are pretty consistent about going to the city manager or somebody to get that answer to people quickly. And then, of course, our city website has had a page about this for a long time, but I do ask people on a regular, not on a regular basis, when this comes up, and it's been, you know, do you know about this? It's been such a long project that I think it kind of drops from the current awareness.
Yes.
Because it didn't just start yesterday, and there's a lot of information. You could spend all of December reading about it.
Yes, you could. Yeah, and what we find is that, you know, our impacts are so isolated in many cases.
Right.
And then as construction moves, then those impacts are lessened, and then we keep going down the road. For the raw water facility example, we were there for 2 years of very, very heavy construction next to Maury's Landing. So I was, you know, there with those people, talking to them, emailing them on almost a daily basis.
Well, thank you very
About
much.
2 years, but it was rough, but we got through it, so.
So before we finish up here, does Councilor Lehan have any comments or questions? Because I'm not able to see if your hand is raised, the way the screen is.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate your report and best wishes.
Thank you. Good project.
So that brings us to our last item for the work session, which is the commercial and mechanical building codes with our city attorney and Mr. Carlson, Amanda Geil-Hinman and Dan Carlson.
Pardon me just a second here while I get this rolling. Okay, you cannot see the screen. For some reason, it is not allowing me to share screen. Maybe I'm not seeing it.
So go back to Zoom.
Oh, here. There we go. Thank you for your patience. Good evening, Mayor Fitzgerald, members of the City Council. My name is Dan Carlson, and I serve as the city's building official. I'm here tonight regarding the adoption of Resolution 3015, which proposes to locally adopt the 2022 Oregon Structural Specialty Code and the 2022 Oregon Mechanical Specialty Code. Tonight, we'll hit on these four areas. The resolution, local code add-backs, stakeholder outreach, and we'll briefly highlight a few of the code changes. You may recall that in November of 2021, we adopted the state residential code. The adoption of the residential code was delayed at that time, and the state provided a grace period to implement it. Through state law, the State Building Codes Division establishes the building codes that must be used in each jurisdiction in Oregon. Each jurisdiction who locally administers a building code program must adopt administrative provisions and technical provisions. The administrative provisions were adopted in 2019 through a complete rewrite of Wilsonville Code Chapter 9, entitled Building Codes. With regard to the adoption of technical provisions, Wilsonville Code Chapter 9 states that Wilsonville will adopt the state codes for local administration via resolution. Resolution 3015 on page 36 of your packet is proposing to adopt the 2022 Oregon Structural Specialty Code and the Oregon Mechanical Specialty Code effective December 5th, today, 2022. We're also proposing to recognize and sync with the state's grace period where projects can submit applications under either the old 2019 code or the new 2022 code. Additionally, we are adding back technical provisions that are found in the model codes that the state has indicated are not under the statutory authority of ORS 55 for the state to adopt. You might recall that we went through a similar add-back exercise in 2020 when we adopted the previous commercial code last year and when we adopted the residential codes. So as for the add-backs, here's a graphics from the State Building Codes Division. If you look at the graphic, you'll see two circles. This is the state's view of their statutory authority to regulate construction activities in Oregon. Some of these apply specifically to commercial and some to residential, and some apply to both. The inner circle is what the state says it has authority under ORS 455 to regulate. The items in the blue circle is what the state indicates local jurisdictions can adopt and regulate under the state-adopted building code. The items listed outside the circles around the border are those items the state says local jurisdictions are solely responsible to regulate if they choose to do so. As with the commercial code, as your building official, I'm recommending that we continue our current practices and locally regulate and add back 12 items. You'll see those items listed here. Those are just a few of the examples. You might recognize a couple of these it's actually kind of surprising that the state sees that they do not have authority to regulate things like demolition or retaining walls. And thankfully, in our last code adoption cycle, we chose to regulate flagpoles. Because you may recall we had a case here with a 130-foot tall flagpole that suddenly appeared installed without the benefit of permits. So we were able to, because we locally adopted code here, we were able to get out that flagpole through provisions like this. So it was a good thing. The 2022 Oregon Structural Specialty Code and Oregon Mechanical Specialty Code contain some significant changes. This is one of the reasons that the state has provided builders, designers, and local jurisdictions a 6-month grace period from the original October 1st, 2022 effective date until April 1st of 2023. The state is just beginning to conduct outreach and training for local stakeholders. In addition, they have provided a summary and a matrix of code changes that I'll show you in a moment. The state will be providing training online and free of charge. In order to maintain the state certifications, staff will be completing code change training and in turn will also be conducting outreach to local stakeholders. The slide that you see here, the YouTube training, is very similar to what they provide free of charge online for anybody to watch at any time. This first slide here, what this is showing you here is the code change summary, the top two documents. And I know you can't read that, it's just representative of the first page. The first page on your left-hand side is page 1 of 340 of all of the code changes that we will be implementing through the structural code. On the right-hand side is page 1 of 108 of the mechanical specialty code changes that we'll also be implementing. To make this a little more streamlined, realizing that not everybody can filter through over 408 pages of code change, they've provided a matrix that I'll show you here, and I just kind of want to walk you through one example to show you how this works. So this matrix, as you'll see here in the very top, provides, in the pink box, provides an example of what we're looking at. So you can see here we have an existing Oregon amendment. It's designated ORA, or we have a new Oregon amendment is an ORA, but a lighter blue color. They kind of look similar on your screen. We also have an indication whether or not there is a fiscal savings or an increase. So when they do an analysis of the fiscal for this code change, whether or not there is an increase or a decrease. So if we move down through here, I would just pick a code change, and this one I found interesting in particular. It's clarifying whether or not you can, what the occupancy is for certain levels of alcohol content for storage, such as in a warehouse, which we happen to have here in Wilsonville. And it gives a threshold of up to 16% of the alcohol is now classified as a group S2 occupancy, which is a lower level occupancy than it was previously classified, which was an S1 occupancy. So if we take that, this matrix, and we correlate it to and cross-reference it to the actual summary, it gives us a little further explanation of what that means. So you can see the red arrow here just simply says beverages up to including 12% or 16% alcohol, and it clarifies it, and it can be in wood barrels, metal, glass, or ceramic containers. Those would be classified in an S2 occupancy. So that's just all that to not just show you what the code change is, but how this summary works with the matrix, and that anybody online can go in and look at this. One of the larger code changes that we're going to see is with respect to accessibility standards. We have been using in my opinion, an outdated accessibility standard. It's the 2009 standard. The latest standard is the 2017 standard. So the new code actually adopts this standard. One of the things that we're going to see, and you may know of the code that requires a circumference or a diameter circle rather within a bathroom. So there's requirement to have a 60-inch diameter circle in a water closet space. Well, that now is moving to 67 inches. And the reason for that is because we have a lot of larger wheelchairs, motorized wheelchairs that need a little bit more space. And so you're actually able to also use the knee and toe clearance that goes underneath partitions as part of that 67-inch new diameter. We're also having larger spaces for, it translates also into clear floor space. We move in the bottom picture in your slide, you see a 48-inch clear floor space for a wheelchair, and now we're moving to a 52-inch clear floor space. So all that has been taken into account. One of our newer code changes as well is we're starting to see more and more of these water bottle filling stations. We happen to have one right outside our door here. And so water bottle filling stations are now required to be accessible. So you should be seeing these on the lower level filling station, not on the upper level filling station. And lastly, a little bit of side humor here. These dispensers, if you've ever gone to a restroom and been confronted with the use of one of these dispensers, these are actually being outlawed now. So we'll be pleased to know that you will now be able to use more than just one piece of toilet paper at a time. So. And that is it. So with that, would be pleased to answer any questions that you would have regarding the adoption of Resolution 3015.
Thank you. Councilors, Council President Ackerbo, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I think I noticed in your slides, and I had marked in our packet information as well, that there was a bullet about fire safety during tall building construction or something like this. And I think in your slides, it was shown as an add back, in the add back category. And I wondered, because it's a topic that will probably forever, or at least for a couple decades, have importance to Wilsonville. So I wondered if you had any additional comment on that piece.
I would be happy to comment on that. That actually is something that came out of the Villebois fire. It was something that we added back actually just as we had just gone through that fire and realized that we had a large wood frame building that was what I coined as in its most vulnerable state. It had no fire sprinkler protection. I didn't have any sheetrock inside of it. I didn't have any siding, the hardy plank siding that's a cement-based siding. And so as it caught fire, it went very fast. And so these add-back provisions are really intended to get at building some safety measures in place, like a fire sprinkler riser standpipe that has to be charged with water when it reaches the fourth floor. We also have to have fire extinguishers ready to go at each floor level at the stairways, and then some other add-back provisions that go hand in hand with that. One of them actually happens to be security. Some form of security, whether it's through some technology, through video. A lot of contracting entities are using video security now to monitor their sites 24/7, or you could have on-site security that you hire. So some very positive add-backs, and actually we didn't have another incident, with the condominium rebuild, so we were happy that this worked.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I have heard, in fact, I was just in a conversation with somebody this weekend who lived right next to had moved in just prior to that fire, and she was asking me about this. So it's really, people are going to be glad to know that this is being adopted for a number of reasons. Councilor Lehan, any comments?
No, not at this time. I think they do an excellent job on their code work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and that is the last item for our work session. So we will adjourn the work session and reconvene at 7 p.m. I'm calling to order a meeting of the Wilsonville City Council on Monday, December 5th at 7:01 PM.
Mic is on?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Will the city attorney please call the roll?
Councilor Linville.
Here.
Council President Ockervall.
Here.
Mayor Fitzgerald.
Here.
Councilors West and Lehan are excused.
Thank you. We will now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council President Ockervall, may I have a motion to approve the following order of agenda?
Your Honor, I move to approve the following order of agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 3-0. We're going to start with a couple of our most important part of the mayor's business today, which is the Wilsonville Wildcats proclamation. And I am going to move over to this area and read the proclamation, which we're going to have on the screen, I believe, because it is very small print.
Oh. Even on the screen, it's very small print.
Do you need the hard copy?
We'll see if that, you know what, I don't
Here,
think,
I'm going to give you a hard copy.
I don't think that does help.
Here, use that one.
Okay, I'll go back over here.
You can read it from there.
Welcome, everyone. I'm going to read our proclamation for Wilsonville Wildcats Week, December 5th to 9th, 2022. Whereas Wilsonville residents honor the faculty and administration of Wilsonville High School for providing a well-rounded education that includes extracurricular activities that aid in the development of life skills, and whereas the Wilsonville Wildcats girls varsity soccer team is representative of the high school's commitment to sportsmanship, excellence, and personal development, and whereas these Wildcats have displayed considerable skills, not just on the field, but in the classroom, where their cumulative grade point average of 3.86 was among the top 10 in Oregon girls soccer and third best among 5A schools. And whereas this 2022 Wildcat team ended the season with 10 straight wins to finish with an overall record of 13 wins, 5 losses, and 1 tie in 19 matches. And whereas the team went undefeated in league play to finish as Northwest Oregon Conference champions for the 5th straight season. And whereas Wilsonville's offense record scored 58 goals while allowing just 27, outscoring opponents 44-5 over the final 12 games. And whereas head coach Alex Bohm was named the Northwest Oregon Conference Coach of the Year, and whereas Captain Kenley Whitaker led the Wildcat offense with a team-high 23 goals and 8 assists, including a goal in the state championship game and the game-winning penalty kick in the semifinal shootout win that propelled the Wildcats into the state championship match. And, stick with me, whereas forward Cameron Shawn, a freshman, tallied 13 goals and 5 assists scored in every playoff game, including scoring the game-winning goal in the state championship match, and whereas goalkeeper Jasmine Brown recorded 9 shootouts, surrendered just 2 goals in 4 playoff games, and led the Wildcats into the state championship game with 2 critical saves in the penalty kick shootout versus number 2 ranked Summit Willamette High School in the semifinal. And whereas 11 players received first team, second team, and honorable mention all-league honors. Kenley Whitaker, Cameron Shaw, and Campbell Lawler, first team. Jasmine Brown, Tegan Waters, and Natalie Kendig, second team. Alexis McKimoyle, Carolyn DeLamotte, Cassandra Whedon, Kia Fee, and Reese Hosley, honorable mention. And whereas on Saturday, November 12th, 2022, the Wilsonville High School girls varsity soccer team successfully defended their 2021 state title with a 2-1 win over Crescent Valley. And whereas this Wildcats girls varsity soccer team displayed exemplary sportsmanship and dominant play against 5A competition to become back-to-back champions. Their success on the field and in the classroom generated positive attention, excitement, and community pride while serving as an example and inspiration to the Wilsonville community. Now, therefore, the Wilsonville City Council proclaims December 5th to 9th, 2022 as Wilsonville Wildcats Week. The Wilsonville City Council commends the passion, resilience, and sportsmanship demonstrated by the Wilsonville High School students, parents, and community members, and we congratulate the members of the 2022 Wildcats girls varsity soccer team for winning a state championship. And then I will sign this document that says, in witness thereof, we set our hands and cause the seal of the city of Wilsonville to be affixed this 5th day of December, 2022. Congratulations. What we'd like to do to begin with is ask the coach to come up and say a few words about the season and the team, and then we will do some congratulations.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Beam. I'm the head coach of the amazing Wilsonville girls varsity soccer team. I want to thank all of you guys here and just the whole Wilsonville community for your support of this team. I know in the proclamation you said how they were an example and an inspiration to the community, and I could not think of any better words for that. I think we're here today because of an amazing performance in a game, our state championship game, to win that. But I think what I really want to communicate to you guys is just how this team was so much greater than that one game. And it really was about our entire journey this season. This team just demonstrated such trust and grit and resilience. They overcame so much adversity, and I think our whole journey is just something that the community can really look to and be proud of. This team really, really is something that the community can be proud of for how they showed up, how they represented the community, and everything it took for them to accomplish this amazing state championship. I'm super proud of them, and thank you guys for all the support.
All right, we will start by,
I'll stand right here.
Ryan's right here, and I'm going to read off the names, and if you come up and I'd like to shake your hands, and then Mr. Cosgrove will hand you the certificate. All right, we'll start with Jasmine Brown. Congratulations. Cameron.
What, do you want to get a picture with the mayor?
Oh, we're doing pictures. Yes, sorry. Ladies.
Give me a signal if you want that picture. I'll step out of the way.
Do you want them to stand?
We're going to do that at the end, okay. But if there's a parent that wants to get a picture with their kid and the mayor, I will move to the right. Just let me know.
Okay, well, no worries. I'll move back. Cameron Sean.
We're going to be in a lot of pictures.
Shay Muma. Addie Areklia. Want to take a picture?
Yeah, right there.
Well, it's a big honor for me to take pictures of everyone. Brooklyn Bybee. Congratulations. This saves a step, will be good. Congratulations. Maddie Downey. We'll save hers. Avery Underhill. Now we're getting it all choreographed. Hannah Aldrich. Tegan Waters. Elena Piazza. Congratulations. Kenley Whitaker. Taylor Schmitz. Natalie Kendig. Alexis McEnroe. Kate Geesey. Grace Wilson. Campbell Lawler. Carolyn De Lamont. Reese Halsey. PFE. And Sammy Baker.
Who are we missing?
Crane. Bree Crane.
Bree Crane.
Bree Crane. Congratulations. Is there anyone else we missed? We had some names marked that they might not be here.
Any players? We got all the players? Okay, so coach.
And now we'd like to recognize the coaches, Alex Beam. And Tammy Sue Bradley. Well, congratulations.
I want to mention the three other
And there,
players.
there were three players who I understand were not able to be here today. I'd like to call out their names and we'll give their certificates to the coach. Maddie Downey, Cassie Whedon, and Ashlyn Ring. The other part of the coaching department that we'd like to recognize is C.J. Cole, Andreas Hodges, and Jake Smoraglio. So let's...
And now the last part of this is to get all of you into this horseshoe somehow. So we may have to go like 2 or 3 rows, maybe the tallest ones in the back, and then sort yourself behind.
Tall girls.
And if there's parents that want to get pictures, I'll let you guys go first, and then I'll get Tall people in the back.
Yeah.
Some of you may have to like take a knee. I'm not sure how. Get right under you. We can get in there. Pretty squat. That'll work. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, perfect.
Mayor, council, whole council.
So you're gonna have a lot of smiling to do here. Okay, look out here. Yes. Look this way. Looking good. Don't move when the parents are done. I need to get one for our Bloomsbury Messenger.
Like just lean in a little bit slightly because I can't see your face. Thank you.
Oh, that's a great shot. Everyone's smiling.
All right, now this is for Hollywood, so I need the 1,000-watt smiles here.
I'd like to.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how many pictures I took. Thank you. Congrats, ladies.
It's a wonderful accomplishment.
Thank you, Dolly. Good to see you. Nice to see you too.
Here I have it. You made it.
Yes, I have it.
Oh, I could have walked it over. Feel bad.
Where they gave them the gates. Wasn't too bad, didn't it?
No, you made it.
Well, that's because I have experience in soccer.
Way to be flexible, man.
Yeah.
Need a little change there to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that was good choreography.
Knock out of the way.
That was much better.
Thank you.
What is this?
How are you?
Oh, you need this back?
No, I gave her my copy, so we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, you can keep it.
All right, we will continue with our meeting after that exciting presentation. It was really great.
It is great
to see our soccer teams, our academic groups, arts, theater, debate, robotics, golf, which is athletic too. I just wanted to mention golf because Councilor Linville's a golfer.
Well, it is.
I know, I just added it in a different order. So we have a lot to be really proud of with our schools in all areas. So moving on to mayor's business, we have a section here where we're going to appoint people to some of the boards and commissions, and I think mentioned at the last meeting, I think we had almost around 24 people to interview for our boards and commissions who applied in this round. Each time there's an opening, we advertise for that opening, even if we might have 3 or 4 people or 5 or 6 people kind of on the waiting list from the past round. So we're very lucky to have so many people who want to serve on these boards and commissions. I will say that we're doing a number of commission appointments, boards and commission appointments today, and then we'll do some more to finish up at our December 19th meeting. And that will hold us until the next round. So, what I would like to do is I think I will ask Council President Ockervall to read the motion. I do have a list of them that I could read first, or do you want to just go through the motion?
We can just go right straight?
I think so. I think it will be more expedient if I could ask for a motion to recommend the following appointments.
And would you prefer that we do it all in one motion?
I think you gotta do them one at a time.
One at a time. Okay. Well, let's begin. I move to ratify the reappointment of Cynthia Russell to the Budget Committee for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2025.
Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
I move to ratify the reappointment of Rachel Barrett and Jean Svedelenka to the Development Review Board A for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2024.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
I move to ratify the reappointment of Jordan Heron, Yara Alataway, John Hildum, and Rob Candrian to the Development Review Board for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2024. And I apologize because, okay, thank you. I may have said the reappointment, but the phrase that I wanted to use was the appointment.
Correct.
And I think it's for, I'm assuming it's for B since we just did A, so maybe for the Development Review Board.
B. We do not specify on this one.
Oh, okay.
These that we are appointing are to the two openings.
Oh, okay.
So that motion is correct.
Okay. But appointment of those individuals.
Second.
And I second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 3-0.
I move to ratify the reappointment of Seiji Shiratori and Ashley Summerlin to the Kitakata Sister City Advisory Board for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2025.
Second the motion.
The motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
I move to ratify the appointment of Yuki Purim and John Bolin to the Kitakata Sister City Advisory Board for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2025.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
I move to ratify the appointment of Keith Gary to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2026.
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
I move to ratify the appointment of Nicole Hendricks to the Planning Commission for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2026.
I second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
I move to ratify the appointment of Mary Pat Hensel to the Wilsonville Metro Community Enhancement Committee for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024.
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes 3-0. Just a couple of other items to note under Mayor's business on business matters since the last meeting. Last week, the Mayor of Aurora, Mayor Brian Asher, and I collaborated on a joint letter from the cities of Aurora and Wilsonville that we sent to the Land Conservation and Development Commission. The letter supported the Department of Land, actually, I should have said the Department of Land Conservation and Development, DLCD. The letter supported the Department of Land Conservation and Development's decision to decline a request by the Oregon Department of Aviation to make special land use rules for the Aurora State Airport instead of creating special interest exemptions to the Oregon land use law. The intent of the letter was to ask that the Aviation Department comply with the state law. And that letter was well received. We understand from the DLCD that they have a full plate and they don't intend to take that up at this time. A couple of other meetings that are coming up, or one other one that I just wanted to bring up for the public, is that the Oregon Department of Transportation has opened up a 50-day public comment period on the Regional Mobility Pricing Project, which is basically about the highway tolling issues. And this is the proposed program to toll I-5 and I-205 in the Portland metro area for the purpose of generating construction revenue and managing traffic congestion. You can go to the city's website to get a shortcut to this comment portal on ODOT's website. We have that very convenient for people, and they will be accepting this testimony through January 6th. With that concludes the mayor's business, and this is now our communications section. Does anyone have a presentation for communications? Okay. And that brings us to our citizen input and community announcements. And this is an opportunity for visitors to address the City Council on items not on the agenda. It's also a time to address items that are on the agenda but are not scheduled for a public hearing. Staff and the City Council will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens' input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If anyone is wanting to comment via Zoom, we have some guidance there. Do we have anyone trying to comment? Anyone in the audience today would like to testify? Okay. That brings us to councilor comments, liaison reports, and meeting announcements, starting with Council President Ockervall.
Thank you. There are just a few things that I wanted to mention. The last week, I attended the tree lighting ceremony that we were able to host this year after a couple years off during the pandemic and the COVID period, well, as it continues, but it was a really nice community event. And so just a big thank you to everyone that came out and watched, and staff for all their work putting the lights up, and the music groups from the schools. It was just a delightful thing. So thank you to everyone involved with that. And then also I wanted to make a comment about our high school student delegation that is here this week from Kitakata, Japan, from Kitakata High School. And this morning, actually the mayor may want to make some comment about our rabbit that we have here at the dais. So sure. I'll let you do, I'll let you do that, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. This, we had there was a welcome dinner for the 10 students and their chaperones this weekend that Council President Ockervall attended, and then this morning was a breakfast here at City Hall, and we were able to hear a presentation from the students all about this wonderful area of Kitakata, and also received a letter from the mayor of Kitakata recognizing their appreciation for almost 35 years of this joint exchange program with that city, which is students coming from Kitakata, Japan to Wilsonville and vice versa, and also business leaders from both cities having exchanges. I had a chance to meet with them on Zoom, of course, with the mayor of Kitakata about 2 years ago, and he told me that because of their long history of sending students to Wilsonville, when they designed their new high school, which we heard about this morning, they merged 2 high schools to form this one that has 435 students, because, he said, largely because of their many trips to Wilsonville, they decided to make, and the impact that has had on their youth and their community. The theme of their high school is citizens of the world. And so that was really great to hear. And they gave us this little gift, which is, this is the year of the rabbit, starting in January. And that will, wonderful, wonderful wishes for good fortune for all.
Yeah, and so a special welcome to all of the students and their chaperones and teachers that are here this week, and you may see them around Wilsonville as they will be visiting the schools, I believe on Wednesday and Thursday they'll be in the schools, and today they saw several of our city buildings and around Parks and Rec and some of our parks and the community center and library and things like this. So if you see them around, please greet them and express your appreciation for them coming to visit us and continue with the sister city relationship. And then the next thing that I wanted to mention is, and actually this kind of relates back to one of our work session items where we discussed the cultural calendar that the DEI committee has been working on, and that is that our Parks and Rec department is doing a activity this month, the next 2 weeks, and it's called the Hunt for the Holiday Symbols. And so if you follow Parks and Rec, Wilsonville Parks and Rec on their social media, there's clues, and community members can hunt or try to find the hidden holiday symbols around Wilsonville, and these represent different winter holidays that we want to recognize as well. So that's pretty fun. So check that out on social media, and I believe that wraps up on the 18th. So there's just under 2 weeks to participate in that activity. And that is it for me this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Linville.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a very brief report. I have not heard anything yet from the governor in terms of the appointment to the opioid settlement board, and I don't know where that stands at this point, so I haven't heard anything either way. I will have, prior to our next meeting, I will attend the C4 Metro Subcommittee, which will be in a week or so. And then the last thing is just a reminder that the Parks and Rec Department is conducting the city's 9th annual toy drive, and residents may drop off new unwrapped toys at the Parks and Rec Admin Building in Town Center Park until December the 9th, which I believe is the end of this week. All toys collected are being distributed to local individuals and families in need. Parks and Rec is also sponsoring the fill a stocking for a senior citizen, and the stockings are intended for older residents who are enrolled in the community center's home delivered meal program. Stockings can include small games, puzzles, ornaments, personal care items, greeting cards, stamps, gift cards to local grocery stores, coffee, tea, cocoa, or snacks. Filled stockings can be dropped off again at Parks and Rec admin offices until December 9th, and there's more information on the city's website. And my understanding is that there is a need for more of the senior stockings. So if you're so inclined to do so, there is a need for those. So, and that is my report.
All right, thank you, Councilor Linville. Finally, the next City Council meeting will be Monday at 7 p.m., December 19th, here at City Hall. That brings us to the consent agenda. Will the city attorney please read that agenda?
Minutes of the November 21, 2022 City Council meeting.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Your Honor, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
And I'll second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes 3-0. That brings us to new business regarding Resolution 3015, which we discussed at length in the work session. If you would please, the city attorney would read the resolution by title, please.
Resolution number 3015, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville adopting the Structural Specialty Code and the Mechanical Specialty Code and repealing all prior resolutions that previously adopted a Structural Specialty Code or Mechanical Specialty Code.
Thank you. Do we have any staff presentation on this? I mean, we just had a presentation. I don't think there's a need for another presentation.
Available for questions, Your Honor.
Any questions for the building department? All right. With that, I will ask for a motion to approve the resolution.
Your Honor, I move to approve resolution number 3015.
I'll second the motion.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, any comments? I'll just add that we did have a very detailed presentation on this and comments on the fact, I will add, and I think we heard it in the earlier discussion, appreciation for the level of, really thorough level of attention that our city gave to this topic. And even though maybe some of the state level resolutions were simplified, the city of Wilsonville, out of a lot of experience and caution and learning from all the years they've been doing this, added to that in ways that continue to support our city to be successful and safe. So with that, without hearing any other comments, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. That brings us to our public hearing. Will the city attorney please read ordinance number 870?
This is the first reading of ordinance number 870, an ordinance of the City of Wilsonville adopting the Frog Pond East and South Master Plan and related comprehensive plan text and map amendments.
Thank you. We did discuss this at length in the work session. Do we have a staff report?
Is Dan available? Is Dan?
Okay, we're expecting to have Dan Polly here.
Do
Pardon me?
you want to hold off on this one, and then we can? It sounds like he might be delayed a little bit.
Well, we could. We could go to ordinance number 871 first.
Dan here.
No, they're different. One's the good neighbor policy for.
Let me call him.
That's all right. Do you want to
Just coming to see if he was here.
Do you want to just knock out the good neighbor policy? Are you ready for that?
Yeah, I could do that.
Come on in.
Let me go grab my notes really quick.
Okay.
So since we...
Since you haven't opened the public hearing yet, we can just come back to it.
Okay, so I'm going to accommodate maybe a transportation to the meeting, give them a little bit more time, and we will now ask the city attorney under public hearing to read ordinance number 871.
This is the first reading of ordinance number 871, an ordinance of the City of Wilsonville amending the comprehensive plan text and areas of special concern map to adopt airport good neighbor policies and designate the Aurora State Airport and surrounding properties as an area of special concern.
And this ordinance comes to us as a recommendation from our Planning Commission. The order of procedure for tonight's hearing is set out in detail in our city code. In brief, we will start with a staff report. Next, the public will be asked to provide testimony. I will ask everyone who signed up in advance to testify first in the order in which they signed up. Then I will ask if anyone present in council chambers would like to testify, and then I will ask anyone who is on the Zoom meeting who has not testified but would like to testify to do so. After each person testifies, councilors may pose questions to me to be addressed by the person who testified or to staff to clarify any information that was conveyed in the testimony. Once the city council has heard from everyone and the city council is satisfied it has all the information it needs to render a decision, the public hearing will be closed. Council deliberates and I will announce the result. We wish to hear from everyone who wants to testify. However, we request that you refrain from repeating testimony already given by someone else. If you agree with what someone before you has said, but you want to ensure you have legal standing in the public record, please provide your testimony indicating that you concur with what has been previously said. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. We will save time for the testimony and we will watch the time of the testimony and provide you with a visual warning when there is a 1 minute remaining in the 3-minute period. Since this is a legal process for conducting a land use decision, we need each person testifying to state their name and address for the public record, unless they do have it already on file with the city recorder. The public hearing is now open. Ms. Batchel, please provide the staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Miranda Bateshell, Planning Director for the City of Wilsonville. Tonight's agenda item is regarding ordinance number 871, as read in by the mayor. This is for the Airport Good Neighbor Policies Project. I briefly just want to remind those at home and the councilors about the purpose of the project, and then I will hand it over to Chris Green, who is with me here this evening, Senior Planner from HHPR. So the purpose of the project is that the city has an interest in the airport as a resource just south of our city, the French Prairie farming district that surrounds it, and the potential growth at and adjacent to the airport. Because of our proximity to the airport and its impacts on our local residents and businesses, we want to adopt policies that give us a voice at the table and standing as an affected jurisdiction. We want to have adopted policies in our comprehensive plan that provide direction to us when we are participating, either at the elected or staff level, in processes that involve the airport and potential growth. So these policies come in the form of amendments to the city's comprehensive plan. We've had a lot of discussions with you and with the community over the past year. Many of the issues that have arisen extend really beyond the city's role, particularly since the airport isn't within our jurisdiction. So what we've tried to do is capture the relevant interests and concerns of the city in a manner and scope that is consistent with our role and that of the city's comprehensive plan. Over the past year, the project team has worked with you and members of the public, key stakeholders, and the Planning Commission to shape the proposed policies that are in front of you this evening. Tonight, we are seeking adoption of the proposed comprehensive plan amendments. The Planning Commission adopted Resolution LP 22-0003 on November 16th, recommending that you adopt these policies. For the record, I would like to note Exhibit A to Ordinance 871 is the Area of Special Concern O text and map that's proposed for adoption. And Exhibit B is the full Planning Commission public record for LP 22-0003 that will be filed with the clerk with Ordinance 871. So with that, I will hand it over to Chris Green, who will provide a presentation of the proposed amendments and the planning process that got us here tonight.
Thank you. So I'm Chris Green with Harper Hoff Peterson Regelis. We were the consultants that worked on this project. I'm going to give a very quick summary of kind of how we got here. So I'll talk a little bit about the project and what we've heard from the community, and then the proposal itself. So a little bit about Aurora State Airport. It is within Oregon Department of Aviation jurisdiction from this history of being transferred to the state after World War II. It's 1.6 miles south of the city of Wilsonville city limit at its closest point. This map shows there's through the fence properties. These are adjacent properties that are near the airport that can coincide with the airport and are allow development related to the airport off of the main airport campus. The airport has had a number of master planning processes. There's one going on right now, and so this process, the Good Neighbor Policy process, is about City of Wilsonville's comprehensive plan. It's a parallel process that'll help guide the city's participation in those intergovernmental processes like airport master planning and other interjurisdictional work. So as I mentioned, the airport is 1.6 miles south of the city limits. This shows some of the neighborhoods and cities, and then the French Prairie generally that's there. There's a lot of different jurisdictions in that area, so regional cooperation is a big piece of this, and there's a lot of people at the table, so getting a seat at that table for the city of Wilsonville was one of the project purposes. Marion and Clackamas County also have jurisdiction near the airport, as shown on this slide. So I mentioned there's parallel kind of planning processes going. This kind of illustrates those as there's processes that are planning for the airport and rules that guide those. Those are typically state and federal and really talk about what happens on the airport site itself. And aviation operations, we're more on the comprehensive planning side of this chart, where we're looking at City of Wilsonville's interests around the airport and adopting policies. When we started the project, there was kind of three basic goals: understanding the impacts of the airport on the community and potential impacts, economic benefits of the airport, and then the big one that kind of recurs is making sure City of Wilsonville has that voice, that seat at the table in future plans involving the airport and the land around it. Community engagement, as Miranda mentioned, was a big piece of this, using a variety of different methods to reach out to the community, get in-depth discussions with stakeholders. So we used social media. Boone's Ferry Messenger is always an effective tool. Let's Talk Wilsonville. Stakeholder interviews to learn a little bit more about folks that work directly in and around the airport and community members. An online survey, 2 community open houses that were held virtually, and then 3 work sessions with both Planning Commission and City Council. So you've seen me a few times now. And so the interests and concerns that were raised, what did the community and stakeholders in this process ask us to look at and to address in proposed policies? The probably not surprising one, noise and air pollution from flight patterns over Wilsonville. We kind of knew this going in, that this was something that we'd heard a lot from the community. There was a few other major priorities that involved resources around the airport. So water pollution, especially in and around the Willamette River and its tributaries. Loss of high quality farmland. There was a lot of concern about the French Prairie region. Potential impacts for industrial development happening outside of the metro framework and the infrastructure and planning that Wilsonville and other cities have invested in their industrial areas. Surface transportation was one that came up, especially on surveys, and not just Interstate 5, but the network of roads in and around the airport. And then wanting to maintain access to the airport, both through good surface transportation, and then one of the purposes was emergency response. There's a lot of services located at the airport, and making sure that development around the airport didn't hinder that from happening. The method of addressing this in the comprehensive plan, the project team settled on areas of special concern. So there's already areas A through N. This would be proposed area O. Some of these areas are inside the city, some of them are outside the city, but they're all areas where there's specific policies addressing an issue in that area. This is the proposed boundary. So it includes areas in and around the airport for that area of special concern. And you can see here relative to the airport boundary and then those through the fence properties that are currently there now, what that proposal was. And one thing that's changed since the last work session that you'll see is there's properties north of the Clackamas County line have been included now. So the objectives, these kind of guide what the city's policies are basically in terms of interacting with this area of special concern. Number one is really the seat at the table, engaging in airport master planning as an affected jurisdiction. The second objective talks about aviation activity at the airport, whether it's through master planning or not, having a role for the city in evaluating and responding to that. Number 3 is sort of related to that. There's agencies and nonprofit organizations, state and federal and then local nonprofits that work on things like noise impacts and other impacts of the airport, and coordinating with those agencies to implement their requirements. Evaluating and responding to either public or private development projects. This applies both to the airport and then that area around the airport where potential development could, take place in the future. Number 5 talks about infrastructure in that area. That was something we heard a lot from stakeholders, is concern about current and future infrastructure capacity, but also making sure that that infrastructure capacity was suitable for rural development patterns rather than urbanizing that area. And then maintaining general aviation and those existing services around the airport, especially emergency services. This one was amended slightly from the version of that objective you saw at the work session to be a little more open-ended about what types of situations that would come into play in. So I will have Miranda talk about the Planning Commission recommendation from their hearing last month.
Sure. So I noted it at the top, but again, the Planning Commission considered resolution number LP 22-0003, which recommended to the City Council adoption of the comprehensive plan amendments to adopt Area of Special Concern O and the related airport good neighbor policies. So staff recommendation this evening is to adopt ordinance number 871.
Thank you. Do any of the councilors have questions for the staff? I'm not seeing any questions. We discussed this at length at a prior meeting, and I believe you've addressed all the points we've considered in the Planning Commission. So for public testimony, we will start with do we have anyone who's signed up for testimony? Okay. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
No.
Okay.
Mayor, you can also ask if there's anyone currently in the audience who hasn't signed up who may want to testify.
Okay, anyone in the audience that has not yet signed up that would like to, you still have that opportunity. It doesn't look like we have anyone providing any more testimony or having any testimony. And is there anything further that the staff may want to add?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Hearing no further issues or requests for testimony, I am going to close the public hearing. It is now time for the council to consider amending the comprehensive plan text and areas of special concern map to adopt airport good neighbor policies and designate the Aurora State Airport and surrounding properties as an area of special concern on first reading. Do I have a motion on ordinance 871?
Your Honor, I move to adopt ordinance number 871 on first reading.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
The motion has been moved by Councilor Linville and seconded by Council President Aukervall to adopt ordinance number 871 on first reading. Is there any discussion?
No.
Okay. Hearing no further testimony or commentary, I will call for a vote on the motion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you. That now brings us to our other amendment, or our other resolution. I have our other ordinance, sorry, I have a different format, ordinance number 870. And I'd like to start at the beginning again and ask the city attorney to read the ordinance for us, please.
This is the first reading of ordinance number 870, an ordinance of the City of Wilsonville adopting the Frog Pond East and South Master Plan and related comprehensive plan text and map amendments.
Thank you. And this comes to us as a recommendation from the Planning Commission. The order of procedure for tonight's hearing is set out in detail in our city code. In brief, we will start with a staff report. Next, the public will be asked to provide testimony. I'll ask everyone who signed up in advance to testify first in the order in which they signed up. Then I will ask if anyone present in council chambers would like to testify. And then I will ask anyone who is on Zoom meeting who has not testified but would like to testify to do so. After each person testifies, councilors may pose questions to me to be addressed by the person who testified or to staff to clarify any information that was conveyed in the testimony. Once the City Council has heard from everyone and the City Council is satisfied, it has all the information it needs to render a decision, the public hearing will be closed. Council deliberates and I will announce the result. We wish to hear from everyone who wants to testify. However, we request that you refrain from repeating testimony already given by someone else. If you agree with what someone before you has said, but you want to ensure you have legal standing in the public record, please provide testimony indicating that you concur with what has previously been said. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. We will time the testimony and provide you with a visual warning when there is a 1 minute remaining. Since this is a legal process for considering land use decisions, we need you to state your name and address for the public record unless you already have your address on file with the city recorder for this hearing. The public hearing is now open. Mr. Pauly, will you please provide the staff's presentation?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councilors. And we've met a lot about this over the last while and have had a lot of great conversations with you and the Planning Commission and community, and appreciate all your input and guidance that have guided us to this point and will continue to guide the implementation of this plan. So with me tonight is Joe Dills from MIG, who's done a lot of great work on this as well as in the room. We have Jenna Bogart and Scott Manser from DKS and Associates. And who else do we have online at this point? We have Samia Keeney from Walker Macy and Mike Carr from Concert Engineers. So a great consultant team that's really supported us to get to this point. So Joe and I will go briefly through, just remind you of some of the highlights of what's ahead of us. We'll address some recent changes and then share that recommendation from Planning Commission, who has, again, given a lot of thought to this and have forwarded a recommendation for approval. So after the overview, we'll cover the minor edits. And so with that, I'll pass it to Joe to give us the brief overview.
Okay, thank you, Dan, and good evening, council members. Let's go to the next slide if we could. This will be a recap of some of the highlights of what we have talked about today. It's an 8-chapter master plan. This is essentially a summary of the work session topics that have been brought before you one by one, and each one built upon each other to follow Wilsonville's approach to master plans, that they cover private development, public development, how the two come together, and how it'll be implemented over the many years. Next slide, please. Just a reminder on the geography here. Formally, the amendment to the comprehensive plan is the land within the yellow boundary on this map. 2 neighborhoods, Frog Pond East and Frog Pond South. Throughout the document, we refer to the already annexed properties of Meridian Creek Middle School and future Community Park as being part of the South neighborhood. Obviously, they're all integrated and important components that will work together as the area builds. Next slide, please. The public engagement was extensive throughout. We created many different ways to participate. There were small focus groups, 2 of which were held with Spanish speakers. There were 3 online surveys, a series of ongoing kind of questions and availability to comment on Let's Talk Wilsonville as well, and then quite a number of public events. You can see a couple from last summer that included popsicles in the park. Next slide. This master plan is really a continuation of a series of studies and policy directions that the city has given over the time. If you go back to 2014, the residential land study was kind of setting the stage at that point for the early Frog Pond work. 6 years later, after the initial adoptions in Frog Pond, the city embarked on the Equitable Housing Strategic Plan, followed by last year's middle housing effort, and that finally brings us to this current master plan. And you can see the arrow continues off of the slide because next year's work on housing issues and the city's housing needs analysis really builds another step from this ongoing planning. Next slide, please. So the vision for Frog Pond East and South has some similarities to Frog Pond West, and really Villebois and other great neighborhood planning that's been done in the city. That's the series of bullets on the left-hand side of the plan, an integration of land use and transportation. And then sort of the new priorities that are brought forward in Frog Pond East and South was an extra emphasis on inclusive engagement, the Equitable Housing Strategic Plan as a ongoing component, the integration of middle housing in both of the neighborhoods, and then a real focus on housing variety and affordability. Next slide, please. This map is our basic land use and urban form map. The colors on the map are indicative of a form-based approach to housing in which we're not regulating by units per acre or typical kind of zoning categories. Rather, there's a focus on the quality of the place. And so the darker brown is our type 1 residential designation. That's where the taller, more present to the street, sort of more compact but still walkable and very livable components of the neighborhoods are located. And then transecting out to the other 2 colors, where essentially smaller buildings and more space between them and more variety kicks in throughout the whole neighborhood. You will be able to propose any of a range of housing types throughout the neighborhood, but with this form-based approach, it's all molded into sort of the types of buildings and the types of sub-neighborhoods that are intended. I guess I'll point out also the red component on the map. That is the main street that's been planned for the eastward extension of Southwest Brisbane. Next slide. The public planning component it takes many forms. There's 6 plans in the chapters, ranging from a tree plan to parks and open space, transportation, streets, lighting, and gateways that are more about the public investment, but much of this will be built by the private sector. So what the master plan does is provide the guidance for what kind of street, what kind of continuation of street trees, where the parks and open spaces should be located. Next slide. The infrastructure infrastructure planning is important for the practical development of the community and providing certainty to property owners of when and where water and sewer and so on will be available. But it also sets the beginning stage for an infrastructure funding plan. That's an ongoing component. The master plan is guiding to it, and that will be finished in the coming months as we get into 2023. But for the master plan's role, what type of street, where the water lines are supposed to go, how the sewer is organized, and then finally the guidance for best practice stormwater management is all laid out in the master plan. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Dan.
Thanks, Joe. And so want to highlight some recent updates and what they came out of the Planning Commission recommendation. A lot of discussion about the edges between the different urban design, really making sure that that's a gradual edge and make sure that that relates, that it's not an abrupt edge. So there's some added language and direction for implementation, particularly in the zoning about, about specifically addressing that transition. Also, call them addresses or what you will, some areas where are very publicly visible and that for special design considerations. This is similar to Vilba. You have addresses such as around the piazza. Same sort of idea, more simple than that. But areas include along Stafford Road, Advance Road, and the East Neighborhood Park, just to make sure that the design makes sense for the context and that we're being very thoughtful about that, as that will have a major impact on the look and feel of the city and the neighborhood. So with that, the recommendation from the Planning Commission was to adopt the master plan, which includes the associated comprehensive plan map and text amendments, including the presented list of corrections and updates that you have in your packet as, I believe it's exhibit, not the new ones, but give me just a moment.
D, 8, attachment D.
So, yeah, so this Exhibit D are the ones that came through at Planning Commission. And then there's a few additional which are in Exhibit G, which you received this afternoon. And this includes adding a acknowledgement page, which is typical and wasn't included yet. So this will include the names of the council, the Planning Commission, and participating city staff and consultants. There was a comment from council about a legend on page 17 where there's some of the references were unclear. So adding some clarification to that. Previously at council, there was discussion about making sure each cross-section had an accurate total width, and some of those don't, so adding those in was noted here. Then lastly, just polishing up and finishing and removing the draft watermark from the transportation analysis, which is extensive, and in that is the specific wording, and just polishing the specific wording about the plans for Stafford Road and Advance Road to make sure what's written in the transportation analysis is consistent with what the cross sections that are shown in the actual plan. In addition, there was some discussion later today about one thing that is in Exhibit D is about adding an explanation of what is a master plan, but council also talked about what's not a master plan to really provide that context for readers. And what recommend is to add some language really explaining the process. Oftentimes when for example, when we went through Vilba, this is how we did it. We had a slide that showed, this is the concept plan, this is the master plan, this is the SAP, PDP, down to the actual construction, and understanding that iterative process. Tried to put that in a relatively few number of words, kind of explaining that a master plan doesn't really, it gives the general types and locations. It's not approval for construction or anything like that. It explains that following master planning, just like any comprehensive planning, we go into write the zoning standards, which we'll be bringing back to council in the coming months. And those are meant to implement and provide those specific standards for developers to follow. And finally, the city then bases approval, once properties are as they are annexed, bases the approval of actual construction on those standards. And also this language acknowledges that as through that iterative process, that it doesn't always exactly match every illustration in the master plan, but still remains substantially consistent and honors the intent of the master plan. So that's suggested language. Happy to tweak that now or before second reading. And let me know if there's any other questions or anything else we can follow up on.
Any other input or comments?
Well, I think it would be great if all of those were in the final document at second reading, so when we see it, we know that it is the final rather than, pieces that might come in later, so that'd be great.
This was a new, it was just an expansion on what we had talked about at our last meeting.
Right.
And I
There's
think...
that call out, yeah.
I think, so there is a call-out box, but I appreciate this wording because I think it gives better clarification to landowners and the public, developers, on what the master plan, as we said, is and what it is not. So I think that does a nice job of adding that context. Any other comments or questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I just want to say that this has been a long process, and I appreciate that we've had the opportunity to look at the component parts of this in detail at numerous times, and appreciate that the Planning Commission has done so as well, and made their really wise recommendations as well. So, and the only other thing I think, and I know that you stated this, was that any of those housing types can be placed in any of the areas, and we've talked about this, I think, numerous times, even though it looks like in the map that they're very segmented. So that's been kind of my comment all the way through the process. And so I appreciate all the work that everyone's done on it and getting us to this point.
Okay, so not hearing any more questions for staff, or do you have a question? Because we'll do comments later. So this is a clarifying question point. Okay. So we'll now move to public testimony, and we'll start with the people who signed up in advance to testify. Do we have people signed up to testify? Okay. Do we have anyone on Zoom? And if anyone in the room would like to testify, you may certainly do so. I'm not seeing any. So given the fact that we don't have any testimony, and I don't have any, I'll ask again if the staff, having, received, let me just ask the staff again, having received some comments this afternoon from council, do you feel like you've got everything that you need? Do you have anything that you think you should add to further clarify or?
Yeah, I think one thing to note that, and this kind of came out in some of the comments this afternoon, is that while we took what's great about Villebois and Frog Pond West and all these master plans we've been through as a city, we also took lessons learned, such as like the appropriate level of detail and how it relates to the code. And so I think we've improved upon that, and as you see the implementation part of this coming through in the coming months, you'll really see how it works together, and I think it will provide for ease of administration and realization of some great communities over the years.
Okay. Well, hearing no further testimony and no other issues that warrant continuing the public hearing, I hereby declare this public hearing closed on December 5th at 8:15 p.m. It's now time for council to consider adopting the Frog Pond East and South Master Plan and related comprehensive text and map amendments on first reading. Do I have a motion?
I move to adopt ordinance number 870 on first reading.
And I will second the motion.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Councilor.
Sure, I'll make a comment. Just that I appreciate Planning Commission's work and staff's work that has led to this first reading, because it's been considerable. I think, in our packet, we listed out all the different sessions. I believe it was more than 20 that we've spent working on this.
10 apiece.
Yeah. The last point when we spoke about this, I had some concerns that I now think are clarified or more addressed in this additional language in the items that are included in the Exhibit G. So I appreciate those additions that we'll be seeing. I also had a comment. I just wanted to briefly say that about that neighborhood park and some of the maps and how it was depicted on the maps. And I did see that staff added a footnote on page 40 to further clarify that it's a 3-acre park, perhaps somewhere in this vicinity, to just be as accurate as we can with what's envisioned for the area, I guess. So I thought that was a good addition. So these little tweaks that we're seeing now, I see. I feel that they're polishing it up and they're putting together a strong document that we'll have to use going forward. And I believe this is the seed for some more really incredible neighborhoods in Wilsonville, which is what we do. So that is an exciting thing.
Thank you. Councilor Linville, did you want to add anything?
I put my comments
exactly
earlier. So,
well, thank you both for your comments, and our whole council has put a lot of time into this. In fact, really going back several years, quite a few years, and obviously this is a point in history. Everyone is talking about housing practically all over the world. And what we have before us, what we've, in our planning commission, our community input, we had open houses. We just had many opportunities to hear from people. And we've talked about our comprehensive plan a number of times tonight, which also reflects the look and feel of our community that has developed over time with input from the community, taking care of our trees, continuing with protecting our natural spaces, and keeping this a wonderful place to live, work, and play with opportunities for lots of different housing prices and types. So I'm enthused about this, and I look forward to seeing how the landowners, developers, future residents all come together to bring this to fruition. So hearing no further discussion.
Mayor, before we get to the vote, I just want to make sure that we're clear for the record that Council President Ockervall's motion included the additions and revisions that were discussed in the staff presentation, and that Councilor Linville is supportive of that in the second as well.
Yes.
Yes, do we confirm that?
Actually, should we, because that was, do you want to just...
Do you want me to restate?
That'd be great.
I think it would be good.
I move to adopt ordinance number 870 on first reading with the additions of Exhibit G and details shared during staff presentation. How's that?
And I will second that motion.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Now for discussion, I want to ask, did we get the, with Exhibit D and the added wording here? Or G, does that encompass all of that?
Yes.
And staff presentation would include that paragraph of text, correct?
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, very good. So, hearing no further discussion, I will call for a vote on the motion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes 3-0. That was the shortest discussion we've ever had about Frog Pond. Thank you, everyone who came to the meeting, for waiting until that point to hear about it. Do we have any city managers' business?
No, I just want to reiterate, the tree lighting event was amazing. I think it gets better every year. We had some good weather, but I was most impressed with the number of groups that Erica has brought into that event. I think we had 11 different schools involved, all different age ranges. So it was just a very nice night with lots of people, and it was just great to see. So that's just a compliment to the Parks Department.
Yeah, it really was fun. The Parks Department has a lot going on, and the city supported them. We had a sponsor there, and just great music. All ages. Any legal business?
None tonight.
Our meeting is adjourned at 8:21 p.m. Well, I really like